Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Accused of infidelity because of her white triplets. But 15 years later, the truth explodes. Angela Williams, a 32-year-old black woman, exuded quiet strength. A veteran nurse at Charlotte Medical Center, she was beloved for her compassion, thoroughness, and warm smile that made even the toughest days brighter. She lived in a colonial-style house in the Myers Park neighborhood of Charlotte, North Carolina, alongside her husband, Marcus Williams. Marcus, a promising lawyer on the rise, was everything she'd hoped for: intelligent, ambitious, but also gentle and caring. Together for 7 years and married for 5, they were a stylish, modern couple, admired in their church and social circle. They shared a dream: to start a family. When Angela learned she was pregnant after years of trying and exhausting treatments, it was a miracle. And when she learned she was expecting not 1, but 3 babies, she cried with joy. Marcus embraced her emotionally, kissing her forehead, promising that they would face this new adventure together. He immediately began talking about expanding the house, creating a room for each baby, saving for college. Their future seemed bright. But behind the smiles and preparations, the pregnancy was trying. Angela was put on complete bed rest after the 5th month. Hospitalized several times for premature contractions, she endured each pain with courage, supported by Marcus's tender words, at least at first. On the day of delivery, under the cold lights of the operating room, 3 cries rang out, one by one. Lily, Noah, then Emma. Angela, panting, reached out to see them. But when she met the nurse's gaze, she felt a strange shudder. She hesitated for a second before placing the first babies on her chest. Angela looked at them and felt an inner jolt. All 3 babies were white, not mixed race. Whites, with translucent skin, almost platinum blonde hair, and pale blue eyes. No features of her, nor of Marcus. The silence in the room was heavy. The doctor tried to break the embarrassment with a clumsy joke. Looks like they took everything from the Scandinavian side, huh? But Marcus, frozen by the table, didn't laugh. He didn't touch the babies. He avoided his wife's gaze. In the days that followed, suspicions quickly spread. Hospital staff spoke discreetly about it. Neighbors asked to see the babies. A friend of Marcus's dared to say, during a visit, "It's crazy how nothing like you they look, Angela. Are you sure you didn't get the wrong crib?" The rumor quickly spread in the conservative Charlotte neighborhood, where appearances were as important as the truth. Photos posted on social media were quickly accompanied by sly comments. In their church, looks grew heavy, smiles strained. Angela tried to stay strong, to smile, to ignore the gossip. She loved her children beyond appearances, holding them close every night with visceral tenderness. But Marcus's behavior slowly, insidiously, changed. He started coming home from work later. He no longer asked questions about babies. When she suggested they take a DNA test to clarify things, he sharply refused. "Do you want me to look like an idiot in front of everyone? If they're not mine, a test won't change what I see with my own eyes." He avoided conversations, intimacy, and closeness. His family, especially his mother, a rigid and elitist woman, openly called him a liar. "You've tarnished our name, Angela, and you want us to act like nothing happened." Angela was hurt, exhausted, but above all alone, the world around her seemed to be turning upside down. Even some colleagues avoided talking to her, fearing they would be drawn into the scandal. Marcus eventually moved to another apartment under the pretext of thinking it over. 2 months later, she received the divorce papers. Angela raised her triplets alone. She returned to her job as a nurse, working nights to be present during the day. Her children grew up with love, never lacking attention, but always surrounded by a veil of social questioning. At school, they heard hurtful remarks. "Is this your real mother? You were adopted, right? Why is she black and you're like a ghost?" Angela replied with dignity, "I carried you. I brought you into the world, and I love you. That is the only truth that matters." But at night, in the solitude of her room, she wept silently, not for herself, but for the world that refused to understand that a mother does not need to resemble her children to be legitimate. Years had passed. Lily, Noah, and Emma were now 14. Bright, curious, and sensitive teenagers, they had learned to navigate a world where their family differences always provoked surprise, sometimes rejection. But Angela had instilled in them the values of respect, love, and courage. Their small home, modest but filled with tenderness, held firm despite the storms. Then, a winter morning, a thick envelope, with no sender, arrived in the mail. Angela, in her dressing gown, was preparing breakfast when her eyes fell upon the simple but nervous handwriting. She immediately sensed that this letter was not like the others. She opened it hesitantly, over her steaming coffee and the still peaceful silence of the house. Inside, a single page. Harsh words. Long-buried truths. Angela, you never knew me, but I couldn't stay silent any longer. You never betrayed your husband. He betrayed you. Before you became pregnant, Marcus went to a fertility clinic. He chose artificial insemination with a white donor to get around his fertility issues. He did it all behind your back. This choice was strategic. He didn't want anyone to know he was sterile. He wanted visibly different children to justify their appearance without arousing suspicion. When the babies were born white, he took advantage of the shock to accuse you. He wanted to shame you and protect his image. The letter was unsigned, but it did contain one verifiable element: the name of the clinic and a procedural date, 6 months before Angela became pregnant. Angela dropped the paper. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. For 14 years, she had carried the shame of a lie. 14 years of stares, of humiliation, of loneliness. And all that time, Marcus knew. Angela went to her room alone. She reread the letter several times, her eyes blurring with tears. A deep, simmering anger was rising within her. Not a destructive anger, but a revolt, just, old, rooted. She thought back to all the times she'd begged Marcus to take a DNA test. All the nights she'd silently rocked her children to sleep while people called her an adulteress. She'd never stopped doubting herself, despite her maternal instincts. But now she knew. The next day, Angela went to the aforementioned clinic. She was met with silence at first, then with embarrassed faces when she presented the letter and demanded an explanation. One of the nurses, visibly upset, finally slipped her a note off camera. I remember your husband. He came alone. He signed a waiver. We didn't know he was doing this without your consent. Angela didn't wait any longer. She hired a lawyer, asked for official DNA tests, for her, the children, and Marcus. The latter, alerted by legal letter, tried to ignore the matter. But the tide was turning. The results were clear. Angela was indeed the biological mother. Marcus was not the father. The children were the result of artificial insemination with an unknown white donor. Angela wasn't seeking revenge. She didn't want to go back in time. But she demanded justice, rehabilitation, truth. She initiated proceedings for defamation, manipulation, parental abandonment, and attack on moral integrity. The trial was public. Very quickly, the local media picked up on it. A black woman unjustly accused of infidelity, raising her children alone for 14 years, while her ex-husband built his political career on a lie. The story had the effect of a bomb. In the courtroom, all eyes were on Marcus Williams, then a candidate for Deputy County Attorney General. Angela sat dignified between her now teenage children. She wore a plain dress, a simple necklace, and a frank gaze. His lawyer was forceful. Mr. Williams deliberately destroyed his wife's reputation to cover up his own infertility. He chose to leave a mother alone, broken, and accused for 14 years. This is not just marital betrayal. It is human betrayal. Marcus tried a lame defense. He claimed he had acted under pressure, that he had hoped the children would pass as mixed race, that the secrecy was a mistake. But the public was not fooled. The judgment was final. Angela obtained financial compensation, legal recognition of her maternity without dispute, and above all, the truth came to light. Marcus, discredited, had to withdraw his political candidacy and was suspended by his office. He became, within days, the very example of the hypocritical and manipulative politician. Angela, for her part, saw her life turned upside down. She was invited to speak on television, welcomed by single mothers associations, and celebrated for her strength. But what mattered most to her was the night Lily, with tears in her eyes, said to her, "Mom, you fought for us. You never lied. You never stopped loving us, even when everyone doubted you. You are the strongest woman I know." Angela hugged her children. Her fight was over, not because she had won the court, but because, finally, the truth had mended his broken heart. 15 years after the birth of the triplets, Angela's house echoes with laughter, music, and human warmth. The turmoil, the humiliation, the lonely nights. All of this now belongs to a past that no longer defines her life, but one that she will never forget. Marcus has long since disappeared from their lives. After the trial, he withdrew from public life, consumed by shame and criticism. He never sought reconnection, and Angela never sought him out. She doesn't need an apology from a man who betrayed her so profoundly. She's built something far more powerful: peace, dignity, transmission. Today, Angela is recognized throughout the state of North Carolina, not only for its moving story, but especially for what she did with it. She founded Truth and Motherhood, a nonprofit association dedicated to single mothers who are victims of injustice, racial stigma, or psychological violence. The organization offers legal and psychological support, emergency aid, as well as discussion groups and awareness campaigns. Every month, Angela leads workshops. There, she meets women of all backgrounds, sometimes broken, but full of potential. She doesn't lecture, she shares. She shares her journey, her failures, her resilience. She looks at these women and says, "You may have been led to believe that you were alone, but you are mothers, warriors, and you have no need to apologize for loving." His story was featured in an award-winning documentary titled The Color of Lies, broadcast on national television. Thousands of women have contacted her since, upset, relieved, ready to speak out in turn. Lily, now 29 years old, is the lawyer specializing in family law, chose this path to defend those whom justice forgets. She is brilliant, combative, with a gentle but unwavering elegance. Every time she enters a courtroom, she remembers her mother, standing in that courtroom, defending her honor. Noah, he is pediatrician at a community center in Charlotte. He grew up fascinated by his mother's tenderness, her way of healing wounds with simple words and gestures. He promised himself he would do the same for the children in the neighborhood, especially those who, like him, grew up in a family deemed different. Emma, finally, is visual artist and activist for the rights of children from medically assisted procreation. Through her works, she explores the themes of identity, belonging, and genetic memory. Her portraits blend skin colors, intertwined roots, and invisible filiations. She often says, "Our family is a poem. We didn't write it with ordinary ink, but with Mom's courage." Sometimes in the evenings, Angela sits on the porch of her house. The sun is setting over the city of Charlotte, and the cicadas are singing softly. She holds a cup of tea in her hands, her fingers worn but calm. Her children often come over for dinner. There are raised voices, passionate debates, shared memories. On the living room wall, a photo shows the four of them, the day Emma exhibited in a gallery for the first time. They smile. A full, whole smile, without a shadow. Angela looks at this picture and thinks, "I didn't want to be a heroine. I just wanted to be a mother." And it was. Better yet, it was a lighthouse. Today, she knows that the truth is not just a light that we hold up, it is also a fire that we carry within us, against all odds, and she passed this fire on to her children. Because deep down, she is convinced more than ever. Family isn't about blood. It's about heart, struggle, and choices. And that is the choice she made, every day, without ever giving up.